Welcome to my presentation on human immunity. Infections are an invasion of the body with microorganisms and can enter by direct and indirect transmission through touching objects with harmful bacteria or a contaminated person. Other methods include insect bites, contaminated food, or passed from an animal. There are three lines of defense against infection. Pathogens are the infectious agents. They are different types of microbes that can make a person ill. These can be bacteria, for example food poisoning, viruses, for example the flu. These are the most common. Other types include fungi, athlete's foot, and protozoa for malaria. Antigens are the parts of the pathogen that help to communicate with the body and informs that it's under attack, causing the immune response. The first line of defense is the skin. The skin forms part of the integumentary system and is comprised of three layers: the epidermis, the dermis, and the subcutaneous layer. The epidermis provides an initial mechanical barrier against the external environment in the form of a waterproof coating. The epidermis also produces melanin, which helps to protect the body against ultraviolet rays. The skin is one of the body's most important physical barriers. Fatty acids on the skin's surface creates a dry, salty, acidic environment that inhibits the growth of some microbes and is highly resistant to breakdown by bacterial enzymes. Injury to the skin or infection will often cause an inflammatory response. Blood flow is increased as blood vessels dilate, whilst varying cell types meet to help increase efficiency. The cell walls in the cells surrounding the infected area develops gaps, allowing the immune response blood cells to pass. This results in the increase of strength of the immune system's response. Symptoms can include swelling, size increase of temperature, redness, and pus is produced, which creates an area of infection. Mucous membranes line the cavities and tubular organs and help protect against open passageways, including the reproductive, urinary, respiratory, and digestive tract. The digestive tract contains stomach acid, pancreatic enzymes, bile, and intestinal secretions, which all work as barriers of infection. The stomach's pH is too low for most bacteria to survive. The small intestine pH is much higher, but still destroys most pathogens, although cholera and typhoid are exempt. The intestine contractions are normal shedding of cells, helps remove harmful microorganisms. Microorganisms that enter the nasal cavity become stuck to the mucous lining. These can be removed by blowing the nose or coughing. The removal of mucus and associated pathogens is aided by the cilia. The rhythmical movements of the cilia move trapped particles up and away from the lungs. The bladder is protected by the urethra. In males, the urethra is long enough that bacteria is unlikely to pass due to the frequent movement of urine, which also flushes away any pathogens. Females, however, have a short urethra and occasionally bacteria is able to reach the bladder. Protection is further compromised during pregnancy due to the hormonal changes and infections can become common. The vagina contains lactobacilli, a bacteria that metabolizes glycogen in cervical secretions, forming lactic acid. The acidity of the vagina prevents harmful bacteria from growing and helps maintain the number of protective bacteria. This is compromised before puberty and after the menopause, as estrogen production is low. Here we can view the structure of the mucous membranes more clearly. The thymus gland is both an organ of the endocrine and lymphatic system. It secretes several hormones collectively called thymus-stimulating hormones, or thymogens. These hormones are produced in the thymus and act upon the thymus itself as it produces and matures T cells, lymphocytes which are then transferred to the bloodstream. T cells produced in bone marrow migrate to the thymus cortex where they are matured. The lymphatic system consists of vessels which transport fluid to cells and tissues. The fluid within the lymphatic system is called lymph, a watery connective tissue that contains plasma proteins and lymphocytes. The circulation of lymph is dependent on the external movement, such as muscular activity and movement from the respiratory system. The lymphatic system is comprised of three major components: the lymphatic vessels, lymph fluid, and lymphoid organs. Lymph fluid originates as excessive or unwanted tissue fluid. The cells within a tissue produce waste products which are passed into the intercellular fluid, some of which is transported to the cardiovascular system, while substances which cannot enter due to molecular size enter the lymphatic system through capillaries. The lymphatic system aids the body with drainage of tissues, the transportation of fats, and protection of disease and foreign substances. Lymph is emptied into one of the subclavian veins via the lymph ducts. There are two lymph ducts in the body, the right lymphatic duct and the thoracic duct. The right lymphatic duct drains lymph from the right upper limbs, right side of the thorax, and right halves of the head and the neck. Macrophages are a vital part of the immune system and are formed in response to either an infection or the accumulating or damaged or dead cells. Macrophages are specialized cells that recognize, engulf, and destroy target cells. When the body is infected, monocytes leave the bloodstream and enter the affected tissue or organ. At this stage, the monocytes change to become macrophage cells. These macrophages can modify themselves to form different structures in order to combat specific infections. Macrophages provide an important part of the body's first line of defense against infection. They are also involved in the development of nonspecific or innate immunity, which is acquired when a macrophage first digests a microbe and produces antigens. These antigens are positioned on its surface and act as a form of warning system to white blood cells that a pathogen is present. The blood cells then gather and multiply, forming another element of the immune response. Active immunity is gained by creating antibodies and includes active natural and active artificially induced. Natural active contributes to long-term immunity. It develops from being exposed to the pathogens. These cells create antibodies designed to attack the pathogen. If these cells are presented with the same pathogen, they will have the memory of it and attack again. Artificially induced active immunity is when the body builds up the resistance to a disease due to immunization. Exposure of a body to foreign antigens generating an immune response. Artificially active immunity is using a vaccine that contains the antigens. Natural passive immunity occurs between a mother and a child prenatally during pregnancy or postnatally. Antibodies are passed from the maternal blood over to the fetal bloodstream for protection. Artificially induced passive provides an individual with protection through an injection or a transfusion of antibodies from another person. This type of immunity is not, however, last long, as antibodies begin to break down. Immune system cells, including white blood cells. These collectively help to defend the body against infection or foreign bodies. They are produced in the bone marrow, and the innate types include the following. Neutrophils, these are a common attempt to block off germs into the bloodstream. Lymphocytes produce antibodies. Monocytes turn into macrophages, leaving the bloodstream. And eosinophils help allergies and release toxins, and basophils. They help to secrete antibodies and anticoagulants. T cells are common in the immune system and make up approximately 80%. They mature in the thymus gland. The three main types include cytotoxic, suppressor, and helper, and function through the release of substances in the bloodstream and signal the B cells. They signal for growth, stimulate the cytotoxic T cells, and activate cells that engulf foreign substances. T cells are a major regulator in the immune system. They assist the B cells to activate and secrete antibodies, functioning through the release of lymphokines. Cytotoxic cells defend against viruses. These actively make holes in foreign substances, causing self-destruction. Suppressor T cells can help the immune system from becoming overactive and suppressing antibody production. These cells are ephemeral response and mature in the bone marrow. They work to defend against attackers and circulate freely within the blood and lymph. Their specific response to produce specific antibodies against specific antigens. There are two types, plasma and memory. Plasma cells provide an immediate production of antibodies. They are produced to secrete a single antibody. Memory B cells remain in the lymph nodes when they're not being stimulated or active. They provide action when required in an immune response or infection. Immunoglobulins consist of proteins that are bound to antigens produced by plasma cells. They aid the destruction of bacteria and viruses whilst neutralizing pathogens. They target infections, neutralize toxins while activating mast cells, working to stimulate the process of engulfing foreign substances. The wide shape enables an immunoglobulin to recognize a foreign substance and capture it, binding it to the antigen. There are 5 types. First is IgG. These are secreted in the plasma cells and are able to cross the placenta into the fetus for protection. Next, the IgA, found in fluids such as breast milk and mucus. IgM is secreted into the blood and are involved in the early stages of immune response. Lastly, IgD, activate basophils and mast cells in a response. The immune system normally responds only to foreign antigens, indicating that it is capable of self and non-self recognition. Tolerance of self and the ability to recognize and respond to non-self are two cardinal features of the immune system. The transfer of human cells, tissues, or organs from a donor to a recipient for the aim of restoring functions of the body. These can save lives and restore essential functions. However, the immune system can act as a barrier, as the immune system is a combat of any foreign agents. This is due to the antigens being recognized as non-self. Due to the risk, it is important that organs remain closely matched in order to reduce the likelihood of rejection. The three main types include hyperacute, acute, and chronic. Vaccination is an exposing of the immune system to weakened versions of a particular pathogen, with the aim of stimulating white blood cells and encouraging antibodies to be produced. Vaccinations contain live pathogens, but these fragments remain harmless. However, toxins from the pathogens are possible. There are some mild effects, sometimes that may occur in an individual, but they are not at risk of developing the disease. Having a vaccine means that if an individual is later infected by the same pathogen, the required cells are reproduced and pathogens are killed at a much quicker rate. The primary response takes some time for the antigen to be identified, and for plasma cells to produce antibodies. The second response includes memory cells. They are now able to recognize the pathogen, producing a lot more antibodies and at a much faster rate to killing the pathogens. Live vaccines are taken from wild bacteria. They are manipulated or weakened in a laboratory, and small doses are given in order to stimulate a response. There is a potential for an adverse reaction to occur as a milder response. An inactivated vaccine is produced by growing a culture. It consists of particles of a virus, bacteria, or other pathogens, and then in time the diseased part is lost in the process by using heat or chemicals. This type of vaccine cannot cause a disease, but requires usually more than one dose. This person is only fully protected after a number of further doses. Immunizations help to protect against serious diseases and will help control the spreading of the viral disease. Children are now able to be protected more against the serious diseases such as measles. Immunization programs have contributed to the eradication of some diseases in the world. Other benefits include creating savings in healthcare systems, extending life expectancy, helping with the protection and prevention of some cancers, and benefiting global economic growth. Measles vaccinations were introduced in the UK in 1968. The Public Health England has estimated that around 4,500 deaths have been avoided, as well as a large number of measles cases, around 20 million. Infections were acquired during the 1980s and earlier. This is when epidemics of measles occurred. Currently, measles rates are still higher than they were in the 1990s, even though they have fallen overall since the sharp rise between 2001 and 2015. Most of these cases are due to people not being protected through vaccination, as this can have a knock-on effect. A number of factors influence the effectiveness of a vaccine. Host factors include age, comorbidity, and length of time since vaccination. Vaccine-induced antibodies wane rapidly in the elderly. In the elderly, a large proportion of the memory T cells have characteristics of replicated senescence. The cause of this may relate to the specificity of each lymphocyte. Comorbidity was defined by Feinstein as any distinct clinical entity that has coexisted or that may occur during the clinical course of a patient who has index disease under study. This means that an individual has two or more diseases or conditions simultaneously. Vaccines are less effective in patients with comorbidity or frailty as the immune system becomes overwhelmed. The immune system is most effective when it can deal with one condition at a time. Lastly, the duration of immunity varies between diseases and vaccines. Lifelong immunity is rare, either natural antibodies or vaccination. When administering a vaccine, the mode of delivery and body location is critical to its effectiveness and to the patient's safety, especially when children and infants. For example, oral route is recommended for rotavirus and polio. Subcutaneous routes are best for children and infants, and the intramuscular route, which is most commonly used. When choosing between a live or inactive vaccine, it's important to consider that live attenuated vaccines are generally effective with one dose, and typically stimulate a broader immune response because their antigens mimic a natural infection. Inactive vaccines tend to require multiple doses, as a protective immune response develops after the second or third dose. Given that vaccines are specific to an infectious agent, a vaccine will only be effective against that specific agent. For example, with the flu vaccine, where the effectiveness will depend on the strain of flu. There is little doubt that vaccines are the best defense against serious diseases. Vaccines are some of the safest medical products available, but do have minor risks. Vaccine safety is thoroughly assessed before licensing occurs, and in order to ensure safety protocol, side effects undergo careful monitoring. Vaccines require storage in the cold chain, which involves maintaining a temperature range between 2 and 8 degrees. Other safety precautions include stock rotation, routine maintenance, limited orders at one time, and appropriately trained staff. Herd immunity is when a majority of the population is vaccinated against a disease, providing a protective element to those who are not protected. When a high percentage is vaccinated, it is more difficult for contagious infectious diseases to spread, as there are very few people who can become infected. For example, if someone with measles is surrounded by vaccinated people, the disease cannot easily be passed on, therefore it will disappear quickly without having a widespread effect. This type of immunity is highly effective in preventing widespread disease and protecting those who can't be vaccinated due to medical reasons or age restrictions. If rates of immunizations fall, this leads to a decrease in immunity to some diseases, meaning the rates of disease will potentially increase. Protective isolation should be applied when there is a risk of transmitting disease. The individual will have to remain isolated until the disease ends or reduces. The isolation method will prevent contagious diseases spreading to the population. The topic of vaccine has always been debated due to varying opinions. The vaccine process has been changed over time to ensure accessibility, so to increase vaccination numbers and immunity. The flu vaccine between 2015 and 2016 was effective at reducing the risk of flu to approximately 60% among the population over typical flu seasons. However, this figure is broad and requires further investigation. The effectiveness of the flu vaccine depends on the person's characteristics like age and health. Similarity between the vaccine and flu strain. In years when the match has been poor, the vaccine has little to no benefit. However, trivalent vaccines are formulated to protect against 3 flu strains, and quadrivalent vaccines protect against 4 strains. The MMR vaccine has been used worldwide for nearly 40 years, but has side effects including mild rash, fever, swollen lymph glands, or stiff joints, but these are considered non-serious with no long-term effects. The vaccine has been demonstrated to be very effective, with 2 doses being 97% effective against measles, 88% effective against mumps, and 99% effective against rubella. The hepatitis B virus is long-lived and can live outside the body for at least 7 days. The vaccine for hepatitis B is key to preventing an individual contracting the virus. The complete vaccine series induces protective antibody levels in more than 95% of vaccinated infants, children, and young adults. Protection is occasionally not permanent, but generally lasts at least 20 years, but in many cases it is lifelong. The vaccine has an excellent record of safety and is extremely effective. Since 1982, more than 1 billion doses of the vaccine have been given worldwide, and it is considered one of the safest and most effective vaccines ever made. Allergies and the body's immune system response to an allergen such as pollen, certain foods, dust mites, or animals. Allergies can become a growing health concern. There are 2 main types, IgE-mediated and non-IgE-mediated. Allergies tend to run in families, so this can help people be mindful when having children. Practical steps to take with food allergies are: know what you're eating and read labels carefully, wear a medical alert item, discuss emergency epinephrine with a doctor, and ask staff when dining out. Dust mites are the biggest cause of allergic reaction, but allergies can be limited by replacing carpets with wood or vinyl, fitting roller blinds instead of curtains, replacing upholstered furniture for leather, using allergy-proof bedding, using a HEPA vacuum, and regularly dusting with a damp cloth. The most recent research surrounding pet allergies states that early exposure may actually protect children from developing these allergies, as children raised on farms develop fewer allergies and asthma. Cat and dog allergies are common. If a family history of allergies is present, individuals should delay adopting a pet until it is clear whether the child has the condition. If a pet is already present, this may reduce the risk of allergy, whether a grooming regime should be stringent and regular. Thank you for watching my presentation on human immunity.